Thank you very much, everyone, for joining this latest webinar brought to you by The Manufacturer. My name's Tom St. John. I'm the multimedia editor here at The Manufacturer, part of 19 Group. Delighted to be your host for this session, where we will be discussing the findings of ETQ's second annual industry survey, The Pulse of Quality in Global Manufacturing 2025. So this is a chance to hear what 750 of your peers have had to say about quality in manufacturing. The survey is a consistent and a reliable benchmark for tracking the most pressing issues across a wide range of industries within manufacturing. So it tracks key shifts from the previous year, and it will be revealing the most pertinent trends and challenges shaping the industry. We're going to be hearing insights about the labor gap, a huge ongoing issue. We're going to learn how a continued shortage is impacting product quality for 70% of manufacturers and what strategies can mitigate this risk. AI adoption, we can't get through one of these webinars without mentioning AI at some point. A staggering 49% of respondents plan to integrate AI into their quality strategy within 2 years. We can explore what this means for your competitive edge. And the recall crisis, discover why recalls are on the rise and what best practices can help you protect your business and reputation. Vic Versace and Chris Nahill of ETQ are going to talk to you. They're going to talk through the findings, and after that, I'll be putting some of your live questions to them. So, gents, welcome to the stage. Very much looking forward to your discussion.
Thanks very much, Tom. Appreciate it. Emma, if you could jump to the next slide, that would be great. Appreciate it. My name is Chris Nahill. I'm the head of content and communications here at ETQ. Joining me is Vic Vaishnavi, the CEO of ETQ. Welcome, Vic. Thanks for joining today.
Thank you, Chris. Good morning. Great to be here.
ETQ is a quality management software company, all B2B, SaaS-based. We help manufacturers around the world in a variety of industries deliver optimal quality to their customers and compliance, regulatory compliance, supplier quality, and basically help companies use quality as a competitive advantage, not just a checklist item. So we're very curious on an annual basis to find out what your peers are dealing with in terms of the goals, opportunities, and challenges in the quality manufacturing world. We'll do a quick overview of the survey methodology today. Top line, the 4 key takeaways or 4 key takeaway groups that we'll talk about, dig more deeply into some of the survey results, and then, as Tom noted, we'll do a question and answer period at the end. So please be thinking about your questions, and we'll hope to hopefully address them at the very end. Next slide, please. So why did we do this, and who did we talk to? As Tom noted, this is our second annual, although probably our third in 5 years survey. So we've got a record here, and we like to see the trend lines. The reason we do this is to collect real-world feedback from folks such as yourself, quality and safety pros, on the trends, the issues, and the challenges that they face, that folks like you face in a variety of industries that impact how they do their work on a daily basis, how they plan for the future, how they overcome challenges. We talked to 750 survey respondents in the US and Europe. It was more heavily weighted towards larger organizations, enterprise organizations of 10,000 plus employees. We find often that they're a good bellwether of trends that are happening across the industry, whether it's a large, medium, or small industry. For the purposes of this webinar, the data and the responses you're going to hear are strictly from a UK audience. We figured we would regionalize it. So we talked to folks in the US, UK, and Germany, particularly. The results here today will be straight from the folks from the UK who responded. The types of people we talked to were people who held the Manager Plus title in a variety of different job categories, as you'll see there, from quality to safety to operations to digital transformation. And as I noted earlier, a range of industries, from heavy manufacturing to consumer packaged goods, medical devices, chemicals and agriculture, automotive, aerospace and defense, a wide range of industries. So this should be a very good cross-section of the latest what's happening in quality, truly a pulse of quality in manufacturing. Next slide, please. So the survey results came down in four broad categories, and we'll address each one of those. Workforce dynamics. Tom alluded to the very obvious manufacturing and skills gap. Workforce shortage and skills gap shortage in the manufacturing world these today. And we'll talk about how that's impacting quality. The state of product recalls, again, growing, which is a little bit surprising. We'll talk a little bit about why that might be happening, what's causing them. AI, can't do a webinar, can't really have a conversation these days almost without talking about AI in some way, shape, or form. AI is definitely taking hold in the quality world, and there are certain applications that are prominent there. And we talk to folks about what they're doing today with AI and what they plan to do in the future and what they hope AI can do for them in the future. And then we'll discuss a little bit on how the survey respondents are investing in quality going forward. Whether this is driven by AI or by the prominent recalls or just the change in the workforce, maybe some supply chain dynamics or uncertainty, investments in quality and quality management are increasing pretty substantially. So we'll talk a little bit more about that and what folks hope to do with the additional investments. Next slide, please. So let's dive in. Back up. There we go. Great. In terms of the manufacturing labor shortage and the skills gap, so there's not only a shortage of people in manufacturing, the folks who are in manufacturing don't have the same skills as the people who were manufacturing professionals 5, 10, 20 years ago. We asked the survey respondents if their firm was impacted by the labor workforce shortage and the skills gap. 72% of the respondents said that their company had been impacted. And of that 72, 90% said that the labor shortage had an impact on the quality of the products and their services. That's pretty significant. So Vic, how does this happen? How does the labor and skills shortage impact quality?
Well, I think if you think about any manufacturing entity and you break down their business operations by people, process, and technology, all three are quite frankly changing. Right? Since we are talking about labor or the people side of the house, when you think about the workforce that, if you break it down by, let's say, baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, if you use those demographics, the baby boomers are pretty much on the verge of retirement. Gen X will be soon, if not already. And then you have fundamentally two major generational gaps there between the millennials and the Gen Zs from what the baby boomers and the Gen X had. So you're really seeing a loss of experience. There is some level of knowledge transfer gaps. There's certainly some retooling and new training that needs to be done. And then outlook towards things like safety concerns or use of technology in the process or over-reliance of technology on the process. The mind shift is big time. You don't see the baby boomers or the Gen X view technology the same way the millennials or the Gen Z do. When you think about the modern, newer labor force that's entering the workforce and becoming more mainstream, they're more tech native, they're digital first, you might even call, and they actually want to use technology. I was reading over the weekend, they said if you look at the composition of the percentage of workforces that are out there, Gen X is roughly 27% of the workforce. Baby boomers are only 12%. And between the millennials and Gen Z, you're talking almost 61%. So you have a huge labor force that is undergoing a lot of skills retooling, and then by definition, it has shortage because the processes and technologies have not caught up yet. So it's their approach to quality and how they enforce it or implement it is vastly different. But it'll take some time to kind of close that gap.
And even though these various get to use technology differently, it seems that technology might help close that gap in some way. What areas do you see tech can help bridge the gap?
Well, we're kind of already seeing it. At least a lot of our customers, ETQ's customers, are already doing things to kind of close that gap. We see heavy investments in AI. augmenting or supplementing the knowledge, providing just-in-time knowledge versus just-in-case knowledge, automating the training and the tracking of knowledge transfer versus having human supervision, so to speak. Heavy investment in connectivity between post-production, meaning the field, bringing it back to the manufacturing side of the house, connecting the customers back into the fold. And then, typically we also see a lot of connected worker technology being implemented on the shop floor. So how do you connect the shop floor to the top floor is the other way technology is actually helping close the gap. And we're seeing accelerated investments being made.
Vic, when we say connect the shop floor to the top floor, what exactly do we mean?
Well, if you think about the quality policies and the quality enforcement that is really observed, quite frankly, at the business process layer or at the highest level or top floor, if you want to call it, how do you try and translate those policies into knowledge and real-time implementation of that knowledge and training on the shop floor, on the production floor? That's what I mean by connecting top floor to the shop floor. How you can close that.
Perfect, thank you. Let's move to recalls. Next slide, please. You mentioned the number of product recalls have grown year over year. It was a small jump this year, but again, went up nonetheless. So we asked the survey respondents, did your organization experience a recall in the last 5 years? What was the cost to rectify the most recent recall? And do you attribute recalls to internal or supplier issues, external issues? As we noted, 77% of the respondents had a product recall in the last 5 years, a very significant number. And as again, I said, that was an uptick from 2024. Of that group, 37%, nearly 40%, said the cost to rectify their most recent recall was between 8 and 39.9 million pounds. 46%, close to half, said the cost to rectify the last product recall ranged from 4 million to nearly 8 million pounds. So these are significant impacts to a business when a recall happens. 47% of the respondents attributed their recalls to problems in the supply chain. That roughly was about the same as last year. So there are ongoing issues apparently in supply chain quality. Vic, overall, why do you think recalls are rising?
Well, Chris, what I would say, we're living in a highly regulated, digitized world, if we think of it like that. There's a lot of increasing regulatory and customer scrutinies that are happening. Think about safety, health, well-being concerns that are becoming more mainstream and more visible. And certainly governments around the world are spending a lot more scrutiny in terms of making sure the products that the consumers are consuming are safe, and good for their health and well-being and things like that. So in the past, maybe it's not like they didn't care, but the tools and the technologies were not available to kind of enforce those types of compliance regulations. And now that is a lot more happening in that sense. So I call that more as, you missed the compliance benchmark and therefore you kind of got recalled, so to speak, because somebody thought you were not good for the market. Thinking about digitized world, think about since social media in the last 11 years, call it the last decade. Think how fast bad news travels these days. All it takes is somebody to make a social media video of a live demonstration of a product that's perhaps not perfect, so to speak, in its quality, and then the thing goes viral. And you have millions of people, not just in your local geography watching it, it's around the world. And if you happen to be a company that has products shipping around the world, imagine the kind of brand damage that it does, not just about the product, but to the company itself. So many times that is forcing companies to do recall, because what else do you think they could do at that point? It is damage control at that point. And then the third piece, quite frankly, is not too far from where we are today, but just think back 5 years. We were hit by a pandemic. And what is the number one thing that got disrupted? Supply chain. Nobody thought that we would all have to sit in our homes and look at a monitor remotely without interacting with people. Nobody thought that the supplies that were traversing around the globe would just completely paused or halted in many cases. So when you think about supply chain disruptions from things like pandemic, that is one example, but also think about in the last 5 years, how much disruption we have seen in the world just in terms of conflicts. Companies constantly having to rethink or retool their supply chains, whether it's due to conflicts, whether it is due to things like the pandemic, or even more recently, think of all the tariff wars that are going around, and that is causing people to change supply chain. Every time you change your supply chain, you are inflicting a change on your quality benchmark, because you don't know what you're going to get this time. If you either change your supplier or worse, you keep the same supplier, but you're kind of choosing a different route, and that's costing you more. So you probably compromise on some other areas to have cost efficiencies, and that has a direct or indirect influence on quality. And ultimately, it all shows up in the form of having some level of recall, because that's your final recourse to avoid brand damage and to make sure that you're not violating any regulatory requirements.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, supplier quality is end product quality, right? They're
yes,
inexorably connected. So, I mean, the cost of inaction is pretty high here. We talked about the financial costs, but there are other costs as well too: social brand damage, customer loyalty, all that. With those costs being so high, why are people not investing more? What's the true cost of inaction here?
Well, I think, yeah, I think it kind of distills it down to like having a little bit of a shallow understanding of the cost of inaction, right? As you said, not doing anything is not a decision, certainly to move towards higher band of quality. The other piece is, quite frankly, just not realizing, or lack of realization, that quality can actually boost your revenue and reputation, not to mention even your margins at the end of the day. I mean, think about how much you're willing to pay for a product that has demonstrated premium quality head and shoulders above its competition or the peers. As a consumer, you're willing to pay for it. Not taking any particular example, but just think about in the smartphone market. Not all smartphones are priced the same. They all do the same thing at the end of the day. Somebody, you want to make a phone call, you want to check out your email, etc. Basics, they all do the same. But why is it that one costs less than, maybe 100 pounds in this scenario, or the other one costs more than 400 or 500 pounds? The difference is quality, at least perceived quality, if nothing else. And I think the third reason is just what I would describe as having a very nearsighted or short-sighted compliance-only mindset, which is, hey, I have to do investments in quality because I got to get through this compliance audit that might happen, or regulation that I have to meet. So I call it taking the approach of doing the bare minimum, or barely accepted minimum, if you think of it that way. Those are all real costs of inaction. You don't do any of that, and it's going to manifest itself one way or the other in the quality of your product. And once that quality is compromised, you can be assured, the margins are going to be compromised, your reputation is compromised, and you're risking, obviously, your top line, the very reason why you built the product as well. So you got to kind of switch from, if I had a one-liner for it, I would say, start thinking of quality not as a tactical necessity, but a strategic advantage. And that requires investment, and that's where you should be making your bets.
Great. All right, if we go to the next slide, please. We're going to spend some time talking about the survey respondents and how they are perceiving quality in the use, perceiving AI in quality and the use of AI in quality. But I'd like to take a quick moment here and ask you folks in the audience a quick poll question here. I guess you can start the poll. Does your organization use AI in quality? And you've got three options here that you can select from. Yes, we currently use artificial intelligence. No, but we plan to in the next 2 years. Or no, but we plan to in more than 2 years. It'd be interesting to see. Just bear in mind, we asked these questions at the beginning of 2025. This survey was fielded in January of 25. And I think even given some of the numbers I'm seeing here, you might see that these answers change, in a mere 8 months, 9 months since we started, given the momentum that we're seeing with artificial intelligence, not just in manufacturing, but in everything. All right, that's great. So I believe you folks can see the poll questions. We have one brave soul who is currently using AI. Congratulations, you're ahead of the game. The vast majority of the folks said they you're not using it yet, but plan to in the next 2 years, and a couple of folks were looking at it in 2 years beyond. We asked the same question to the survey respondents. What are your organization's plans for using artificial intelligence, and what do you hope AI can do for your organization? In terms of the data there, 49% of the folks that we polled again in January of this year plan to deploy AI within the next 2 years. So that maps pretty closely to today's audience as well. That's up, by the way, from 47% the year prior. 34% are already using AI, and the remainder would be the folks who are looking to use it in 2 years or more. Interestingly, 1% of the people said they never plan to use AI, and we firmly believe that they will be using AI. They just don't know it. For the folks who are currently already using AI, 61% of them said they're using it to automate core processes. 47% plan on investing in AI to spot defects on the factory floor, and some of that can be used to actually predict defects and sort of predictive analysis going forward. 47% plan to use it as far as to automate document processing, basic processes. And again, 42% are planning on using it to predict future trends. So, I mean, clearly AI is here. The momentum is growing, even from the beginning part of this year. From your perspective, what do you think are the most impactful ways AI can bolster quality and safety in manufacturing right now?
Well, I think the first thing, two things before we kind of get into that. One, and both of these I kind of learned from some of our customers that I spoke to recently. One of them said something which was a little bit, it sounded funny at that point, but I think she made a good point when she shared this. She said, look, AI used to be almost intelligent, AI, and now it's awesomely intelligent, AI. I think that's more of a comment on the maturation of AI as a technology, as an enabler that we are seeing. So that was one. The second comment was from another customer who said, AI is not going to hurt us, but somebody using AI might. And that's also a profound statement, more in terms of a competitive edge or using it to gain a competitive edge. And if you tie it back to what we discussed earlier, wherein quality can be your strategic advantage. So if you take that thought process and combine it with AI, you can certainly use it to bolster your strategic advantage through quality and safety. Now the question is, where do you use AI to get that advantage? Not any particular order of priority. The first space where we are seeing a lot of our customers experiment and start to dabble in it or tinker in it, if you will, is predictive analytics. Predicting what the quality and the safety scorecards might look like as they finish a particular product cycle or quarterly basis, et cetera, just to kind of see what is quality going to look like. The second area is what I would say is lowering that cost of remediation that we talked about earlier, which is how do you see the future, both in terms of quality going up, but also predicting when the quality is, tapering down, which means you stop quality problems before they happen and become expensive. In this scenario, one of the simplest example is don't ship a product that's going to cause a recall. So it is easier to catch it when it's within your production house versus once it reaches the customer's hands. So that's a second area. We're also seeing investments in terms of experimenting using agentic AI to automate some of the workflows and the processes. This is where, when I talked about the Gen X versus millennials versus Gen Zs, that's where those types of automated workflows and processes are being retooled using agentic AI to kind of catch up and make sure that the workforce can match the technology maturation that's happening. And then another area is, remember, we talked about, hey, compliance and regulatory requirements are becoming increasingly a lot more heavier. So guess what? Don't spend too much time on compliance reporting or regulatory update and conformances. Just use AI to automate some of the reporting and the analysis that you need to do there. You don't need to expend a lot of time, taking care of, I call it bookkeeping, but that's the kind of stuff that you're trying to do. Just use that. Your time is more valuable in spending on, bolstering your quality and then ensuring that you don't have quality problems before they become more public or more visible.
Makes sense. And I think you touched on it a bit too, but to even go back to the workforce gap, but there's a role, I think, for AI, right, in terms of helping close this gap or close the skills gaps in terms of training, just-in-time training, tracking, all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
All right, Emma, can we move to the next slide, please? All right, so we polled the survey respondents on how they're going to change their investments in quality, and they all basically said, or the majority said, they plan to increase their investment in quality. We did ask them how much the organization spends today on programs and people, how their spending will change in 2025 versus 2024, and what were the business drivers, the top business drivers for increased investment in quality here. Just some context here. Of the people we polled, 59% are currently using an electronic quality management system. That's still fairly low for some of the sizes of companies we're looking at, right? It's always a little bit surprising when you hear these large global enterprises that are still doing quality management with SharePoint, Excel sheets, email, things of that nature too. Automated, but just barely. Of the folks who we talked to go back to one of Vic's earlier points, 43% do view quality as a strategic corporate initiative, while only 40% use quality to just meet regulatory requirements. And we did ask, unfortunately, how many people were still using paper to do quality. Almost 30%, 28% are still using paper to do quality management. That scenario, how does that scenario occur? 30% of the folks said that the biggest barrier to achieving their quality objectives was inadequate tools or technology to achieve their objectives. Lack of training came in at 28%, and weak executive support and insufficient budget came in at 22% and 20% apiece too. So sort of lack of support within the organization to take quality seriously as a strategic imperative was helping them. Was preventing them from meeting their quality objectives. 69%, nearly 70% of the folks that responded to said their organization's total spending on quality will increase in 2025. 40% of the current respondents spend between 8 million and 39.9 million pounds per year on quality programs. 27% spend more than that, between 40 million and nearly 80 million pounds per year. And the top three drivers, when asked to justify their investment in quality, included improved compliance, strengthening their supply chain, and increased revenue. Improved compliance came in at 48%, strengthening the supply chain came in at 47%, and increasing revenue 46%, all very closely clustered there. So Vic, if we look at the top three drivers, increased revenue is right up at the top, and you've talked a little bit about this before. But can you explain how investing in tools and technology for quality management actually can boost revenue?
Yeah, so I kind of go back to the data that you shared, which is, inadequate tools or technology, is the biggest barrier. But more importantly, if you think about weak executive support, which was, I believe you said about 22%,
Yep.
One of the things you can easily do to get executive support is to demonstrate a correlation between quality and increasing revenue. Because I don't know if any executive who's not going to be interested in listening to, how can anything, quite frankly, increase revenue. Now, going back to how investing in quality tools and processes can boost that revenue, let's go back to the example we took earlier. Smartphones. Not all smartphones are priced the same. If you have a higher quality product and you can move to the market faster than your competition, it means you have a window where you can have premium pricing, but also in many ways kind of skim the market and kind of take rapid market share. Which in turn, if you go there first as a first mover advantage, if you will, you're going to end up having a better brand reputation, which we talked about earlier. If your quality is better, the viral videos or the propaganda that you're going to get as a tailwind, that's going to drive your brand reputation. More brand reputation, put it on another viral wave another time, leads to customer loyalty, because everybody is going to tell 5 other people or 7 other people, like, hey, this is a better quality product. And not to mention, think about, again, sticking with the smartphones analogy, repeat sales, right? Once you have cultivated a brand reputation, there is more than 90% chance that the customers are going to come back to you next time again when they need the next product from you, because you have a reputation now of higher quality. Price becomes a secondary factor, because with that higher quality comes premium price. And by the way, with repeat sales, you get shorter sales cycle, less selling to do. You're kind of, the customer is convinced. It also means you have easier compliance, which means you don't have the regulatory punitive audits, fines, and punishments, I suppose, that you get. And then within your production lines, you have a lower scrap. You're not wasting, your raw materials, if you will. There is less rework, which means you're not actually retooling or redoing things over and over again to get to that quality benchmark. And then certainly, if you're any kind of manufacturer, quite frankly, you probably track your warranty costs, very, very carefully, because if there is a recall or if there's a warranty piece, it's a repair or replacement that you have to do. That's going to affect your bottom line, which fundamentally means if you invest in the quality tools and processes, you're going to see these elements that I described, after effects that I described, as byproducts of investing in quality. And look at what they're doing to you. They're increasing your revenue, they're increasing your margins, increasing your customer brand reputation, customer loyalty, repeat sales, shorter sales cycle. What's not to like about that?
Not much. So this is hard to say, but putting the dollars and cents aside for a second, what other areas would automating quality management deliver the most immediate impact?
Well, I think go back to the very beginning when we talked about the workforce and the shift in the type of labor force we have. It's a generational shift that's happening slowly but surely. One of the things that you get as a benefit by automating quality management is the more modern workforce that is entering the workforce. They experience stronger employee engagement because they feel like they're focusing on value-added work versus basic workflows in the process. So there's also better use of quality data across your entire enterprise to make better decisions. Better decisions made faster means you can get to that quality journey or the pinnacle of quality that much faster. So between employee engagement on value-added work, using quality data to make better informed decisions for your business, again, you're getting to the finish line faster with less overhead. And quite frankly, if you ask me, the cost of getting there is much lower because you're automating and not wasting a lot of cycles, both human capital as well as technology and process, by automating quality management.
Good stuff. Next, and I believe final slide. So that's a quick overview of the ETQ 2025 Pulse of Quality in Manufacturing Survey. We'll do it again in 2026. We'll track some additional changes and see where the industry is, add some additional questions. We hope to be back again next year with some additional information for you. If you're interested in seeing, as I said, this is just a top line of most of the survey. They're richer answers. If you'd like to see the entire survey report, please go to etq.com, and it's available for download in PDF form there as well too. If you have, as I said, all of our data today was specific to the UK market. The survey you'll download, I believe, has US dollars. Well, actually has global dollars as well, and responses as well too. If you have specific questions about areas on this for the UK market, feel free to email me, cnahill@etq.com, and I might be able to pull out some data from additional data for you from the survey if you'd like. In the meantime, if there's any questions, Tom, I think we can go back to you and see if there's any Q&A that we can answer.
Thank you very much for that, gents. That was incredibly interesting. Really kind of good insights, and some very kind of interesting things pulled out of that. As Chris has just said there, please do get your questions in. Please use the chat function, and I will put your questions to these gentlemen. I just kind of listening to that, and I think my question would be: Are we really seeing quality kind of being baked into strategy? I think you mentioned this, Vic, but given that there is an increased revenue is being cited as a top driver, are we seeing this actually kind of being baked into company strategies now?
I think you are beginning to see certainly those manufacturing entities that are looking to leverage quality as a strategic advantage, as a driver. They're certainly baking that into their strategy. In terms of technology, and I'm going to tie it to the question that I'm seeing in the in the window there. Most of the customers, our customers that I have talked to, who are baking quality as part of their corporate strategy, are also kind of integrating that strategy through an AI-enabled quality. All of the commentary that we discussed earlier, which is automation of workflows. There is both, I would say, organic and inorganic means to kind of automating some of those workflows. They are kind of doing that. In terms of strategy, I would say there's fundamentally three areas that we're seeing customers focus or incorporate quality. One is the easiest one, which is supply chain. Supplier quality has a direct correlation to your product quality. Holding the suppliers accountable for their quality benchmarks, incorporating those into supply chain contracts, long-term, T's and C's, so to speak, making sure that there's enough incentive for the supplier to improve quality, but also a penalty in case they don't, because at the end of the day, you don't want to bear the cost of poor quality all by yourself. So, which is, hey, let's be partners here truly and share the risk equitably. The second area we're seeing is completely looking at the workflows involved with quality. How many of the workflows or what type of workflows are predominantly overheads, and they might have just been oversights? Can they be gotten rid of completely by using things like AI to automate them? So that's the second part of quality strategy. And the third one, which is interesting to kind of watch it unfold, and again, some of our customers shared this. I'm not sharing anything that I picked up myself. It's really the customers teach us all this, is pricing and packaging. And you're wondering, like, what has that got to do with it? Well, a lot of our customers are doing benchmarks, quality benchmarks, to see against their competition or their peers, to see where do they stack rank. Are we in the top 1, top 3, top 4, whatever the benchmark might be. And they track different elements of quality, whether it is amount of scrap, amount of rework, etc. And the easiest way they are doing it is figuring out who is launching products into the market faster than them, or are they the front runner? They're also tracking things like how long does it take for our competition to deliver the same product, presumably with the same quality, So if your competition is taking longer to get to the market, albeit it might be the same quality, you now have a finite window in which you can not only skim the market, charge a premium, but guess what? Come out with the next version of your product, which again extends that runway more and more for you to stay up in the air, while the competition always completely plays catch up. Going back to the technology, in terms of how folks are using it internally, we've seen all kinds of technology elements being used, whether it is a commercial form of ChatGPT or a Copilot or even Gemini. I would say generative AI is one area where people are spending a lot of time in terms of trying to, understand what they can do. Basically, I call it converting a question into text or images. And then we have some folks, albeit small percentage, but a rising percentage, that is looking at agentic AIs to automate workflows. What does that mean? That means all of those overhead workflows we had where human intervention was a mandate from a decision intelligence perspective, let the agent AI agents kind of make those decisions. How do they make those decisions? Well, feed them all of the historical data to figure out, based on a large learning model or stuff that they might be using, to say, hey, in 8 out of the 10 cases it happened last time, we took this path or we made this decision. And the system kind of tells you very much faster than a human brain could probably process and tell you what that might look like. So we're seeing customers kind of talk a lot about that part. There's a huge investment going into data lake strategy, which is take quality data, using layman's terms for a second, not to sound too technical, but hey, store all the quality data, mine through it. Data is the new oil, quite frankly, and you need to mine it from its crude state to make it refined, so you can actually drive your quality vehicle at the end of the day. No pun intended there. But that's the kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff we're seeing our customers do.
Great, thank you for that, Vic. It's kind of touched on a question being asked there by Patrick about, could you mention any specific AI quality tools that are deployed in practice?
Yeah, given this is a public forum, so to speak, I wouldn't endorse one AI quality tool versus the other. I would say they all serve. What I would tell you is you don't want to look at an AI quality tool in a vacuum. You want to really look at the use case that you're trying to automate. If it is supply chain quality you're trying to monitor, there are tools that'll do something differently. If you're just looking for basic quality data mining to understand trends, exceptions, norms, deviations, SPC, all that kind of stuff, there's different tools for that. So again, I would say, I hate to say it this way, but it depends. And the answer is it depends on the use case you're trying to solve. If it is cost of recalls or warranty pieces, that's more I would say CRM-ish type. So I'm kind of leaning towards they're saying, look at the AI tools that your CRM system might have, and you probably don't need to buy another one because that you can tie it back to your customer service or recalls or customer complaints department, stuff like that. So short answer, it depends. Map your use case and then do your research.
Great. Thank you, Vic. A question here asks, as someone who manages the IT manager of an engineering firm, in a Windows environment, currently implementing Copilot, which uses SharePoint and data we can manually upload to cross-reference, where or how can I find the latest data to help integrate the data, and what's the biggest implementations you have seen so far? I would like to push this further. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, so at the risk of plugging our own solution, I would say start with ETQ if you haven't already. You can probably do away with a lot of the SharePoint work that you might be doing. And certainly in terms of integrating the data, a QMS platform like ETQ does have the data lake. It comes with the data lake. You can certainly do that. Speaking of implementations we have seen so far, I can certainly talk in terms of our own customers. The leading edge ones have all practically implemented or at least are in the process of doing their data lakes. And fundamentally, there is, at the highest level, I would say it certainly contains quality data, which obviously a QMS system is tracking. But they're also integrating the two other data sets. One is their ERP data, which has things like, for example, supply chain planning data, supplier data, and things like that nature. And the third is CRM data, very commonly seen CRM data. And the correlation is very simple. You have quality, you think of it like a triangle. You have quality on one side, you have your supplier information on the other, and you have customers on the third vertice. And you look at the three vertices of the triangle, what you're really trying to do is draw a correlation between what that shape of the triangle is. You want it to be an equilateral triangle, not an isosceles triangle or an unequal triangle. Certainly don't want it to be a right triangle, because that will be a train wreck in terms of like somebody is having a problem big time. But balancing that triangle in some ways is the best implementation I have seen with some of our customers, where they look at supplier data correlated to the quality data and say, who do I need to have a conversation with next quarter to figure out, hey, you're causing my equilibrium to get disrupted. So guess what? We should have a conversation about it. Or on the other side, which of your customers, who you are kind of shipping your products to, whether it is wholesale or end, those are different. But basically say, hey, I think I'm seeing a quality inequality between this sector of customers or segments. Let's look at the data set of those customers and go to proactively and say, hey, listen, in this scenario, I'll take a negative example first, which is, hey, we're foreseeing we might delay your shipment by 1 week because we found a problem. So would you rather have a delay of 1 week, or would you have a recall after that 1 week? That type of a decision making is the other types of implementations we're seeing. But to answer the question, start with a QMS. And by all means, since you're here and asking the question, start with us if you haven't already.
Great. Thanks, Vic. Question here that asks, how can quality leaders leverage emerging technologies like AI-driven predictive analytics and digital twins to not only ensure compliance, but also create a proactive quality culture that drives innovation and resilience in global manufacturing?
Yeah, I think when we talked about earlier, we talked about predictive analytics. I mean, think about hindsight, insight, and foresight. Think about three eyesights that you have. Hindsight tells you where you have been, where you are coming from. That's kind of like the rear view mirror in your car. And there's a reason why the rear view mirror is smaller than the front windshield, because you're looking back. Insight is what is happening at the moment. And then foresight is looking at both hindsight and insight to figure out what the future might look like. What you're really trying to do at the end of the day is become proactive in ensuring that when you ship something, that it meets and or exceeds your quality benchmarks. It's just that simple. And AI certainly is one of your best friends there, because the speed and the accuracy with which it can actually allow you to make those foresightful decisions using insights, and then certainly looking back in the rear view mirror and looking at your hindsight to figure out what the trends might be indicating. The advantage you have is it's data-driven versus emotion-driven. And you are trying to make sure that you're taking care of your quality issues, if anything, before you actually ship. I think one of the stats that I read is for every dollar that you might spend, or a pound you might spend, or a euro you might spend, or any currency you might spend fixing or taking care of quality before it leaves your production house, you're actually saving 3x or 4x of that amount. God forbid if it turned into a recall or a customer complaint tsunami, that might happen. The other area is, we talk about digital twins. What is a digital twin? That's just basically saying, what I see on my shop floor, can I make a digital copy of it? Can I digitize and create a blueprint of my entire production process? So I can study it in a digital form as opposed to constantly observing it in its physical form and trying to figure out what the quality manifestations might look like. So AI can certainly help you there. Think about, I'll take an analogy just to give an example. Think about your automobiles. Today, you go into your service center of your dealer or your local mechanic, they lift up your car, they start looking at everything, and then they come back and say, oh, you're leaking here, and this happened, that happened. Imagine a state where you had the blueprint of that car on your computer, and all the historical data of when you have had oil leaks, when you have had a coolant spillover, when you have had brake fluid leakage, when you had a tire pressure change, or anything of that sort, to basically run it through a composite algorithm that comes back and says, in this service visit, you need to do these 5 things and you're good to go, versus the human in the loop having to check each time. I'll give you a very funny example. Recently, somebody in my family took their vehicle for a regular oil change. I'm giving an example of a digital twin. And it might be true in most parts of the world. They take a walk around the vehicle, they make a video out of it. That's as much digital twin that you get. And then they come back and tell you, we've noticed, air filter is bad. This is bad, that's bad. But what they realized is that there was a coolant spillover everywhere on the engine and everywhere else. They could not tell why. Was there a leakage there? Or was it just a mechanic or the service person had accidentally spilled it over? Now, that family member of mine is kind of paranoid because every time that person is driving that vehicle, they don't know if their meter system is going to just overheat and the engine is going to blow up. That's where a digital twin, if they had a digital twin, a blueprint of the vehicle and historical data, the last time you came, here are the things we did, you would have a peace of mind. Whether it was a real leak or not, they could diagnose it. So think of that as an example of a digital twin. This is how you would improve your quality across. And this is a post-production because you're taking the vehicle, you already have the vehicle. Imagine if this was done both pre and post. Imagine that customer experience you would have.
Great. That's a great answer. And then I'm going to ask one final question, and this is actually an interesting one, again around AI, but around that sort of perception and some of the fear that has been generated through AI, rightly or wrongly. How can manufacturers upskill their workforce to adapt to AI-driven quality systems without creating resistance or fear of job displacement?
Okay. So I'll ask us to go back a little bit, maybe into the early 1980s, the advent of the personal computer. Forget miniaturization using laptops, etc. Just a basic computer. Wasn't this the same fear at that time? Hey, we have a computer is coming. I can't do anything. I'm going to lose my job. Everything is going to go away. Has that happened? It certainly hasn't in manufacturing. All that it has done actually is it's allowing you to do your job better. Allowing you to do your job better is also trying to essentially allow you to make better informed decisions so that the product that you're working on the assembly line where you are, on the production floor, your responsibilities, is allowing you to be more effective and efficient. Does this mean that there'll be, no implications of it? I wouldn't go that far, but it just simply means you're going to retool yourself into doing more value at work as opposed to the mundane work part of your job that you might not be interested in. Also, do understand, think about it this way. The more AI people use, the more data it's going to generate. The more data it generates, the more use of human supervision, at least observation of the recommendations that AI systems are telling you goes up more and more. Think about it the same way. When the PCs came in and the personal computer kind of came in, it created more, I'll use the word printouts. Remember the big line printers people used to read? You had to study more of them, because they were dumping more data on you. It is very similar to it. What can you do? Well, learn to embrace it. You don't have to fight it. As I said earlier, AI is not going to hurt you, but somebody using AI, your competition, will hurt you for sure. So it is best if you kind of embrace it as a tool and not really as a job aid, as a tool aid, and not as a replacement at the end of the day. I wouldn't go that far as to saying have a fear around it. I think it can be your best friend, assuming you want it to be your best friend.
Fantastic. Gents, we're going to bring it to a close there. Thank you to everyone in the audience, and apologies for the slight technical issues we had during this session. We hope you enjoyed it all the same. And as Chris mentioned, you can reach these gentlemen to continue the conversation further. If you had a question that you didn't think of asking during today's webinar, then please do follow up with them. I'm sure they'll be happy to continue the conversation. If you found any of this interesting, then there is plenty more news, insights and trends on UK manufacturing over on the Manufacturer website. So do go and check that out. We hope to see you in the next webinar session, but for now, enjoy the rest of your weeks. Take care. Chris and Vic, thank you so much for your time. Really interesting to get your thoughts.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.